Welcome back to History in a Hurry. Today we're going to talk about one of the most fantastic stories in American history. And I like doing this on Fridays because I think this is a great time for us to explore some of those kind of off the beaten path stories that don't get talked about a lot in your traditional history class. And so today's story is going to start us off in a little place that, as Herman Melville said, is tucked away offshore, and that is Nantucket. Now, Nantucket is a beautiful place to see. My wife and I went to go see it this past summer on our trip back east. But this story is going to take place actually out on the open ocean and centers around the major industry of Nantucket in the 19th century, and that was whaling. It's going to tell the story of the Whaleship Essex. We're not going to go through the whole thing. This story is one of my favorites. It's chronicled, if you want the whole thing, it's chronicled in a book by Nathaniel Philbrick called In the Heart of the Sea, which is a great read, really quick read. Really dives into the history of whaling, the history a little bit of Nantucket, and you learn a little kind of insights about that experience and sailing itself in the 19th century. But suffice it to say, the Whaleship Essex in 1819 set sail for another whaling voyage. It's now under the command of Captain George Pollard and First Mate Owen Chase. George Pollard comes from a known family on Nantucket, whereas Owen Chase family is kind of from what they often refer to as a landsman or an off-islander. His family's not originally from Nantucket. They encountered a little bit of difficulty right off the bat. They nearly get knocked down completely in a squall, suffer some damage to some of their boats, and they have to put in for repairs. They discover that a lot of the whaling has kind of been fished out in the areas of the Atlantic, and it's time for them to sail around Cape Horn and head out towards the Pacific. And as they go, they hear stories of large pods of sperm whales out in the offshore hunting grounds, which is this region of the Pacific that is thousands of miles from any known place, sometimes referred to as kind of Point Nemo, kind of one of those places where it's just so isolated from any area. And so as they sail out there, they are in the process on one of their hunts for the whales, struck and stove by a sperm whale, and the ship is sunk completely, and the survivors have to climb into their 12-foot long whaleboats and try to make the journey back home. Unfortunately, the survivors are 3,000 miles from any land, and they're trying to find a way to navigate. Their best bet, they think, is to head kind of back the way they came, because they had been told stories of the natives on some of the South Pacific islands being cannibals, and they didn't want to fall victim to that. So they set sail for what actually is a longer journey than heading towards safety of one of the islands where there was a missionary station that had been set up. And in the end, they end up having to resort to cannibalism to survive. And it's quite a fascinating tale of all of them. I don't want to spoil all of it there because I really want to encourage you to read the book to really understand a little bit about why this is so significant. I will leave you with this. The story of this tragedy was recalled in several books about it. It was actually told to children in history books for a long time. But Herman Melville actually heard of this story, and that helped inspire the writing of Moby Dick, so that it would kind of live on in kind of legend as well as in historical facts. It's a beautiful kind of thing when art and life kind of cross paths there. So great story. Unbelievable story of survival, of courage, and a little bit of arrogance too. It's a really neat character study as well. So I encourage you to pick up the book In the Heart of the Sea. If you haven't read it before, you really ought to. So Nantucket, great place to go visit. In the Heart of the Sea, read the book. Amazing story about the Whaleship Essex. This has been History in a Hurry.